Welcome to What a Word is Worth, a space for creative minds to speak about viable ways to heal the world through writing and many other inventive mediums. This is your host, Neela Medrano. I am the founder of Palabra Training Center, where words are given as medicine. And my guest today is a dear friend and someone who I have been dreaming to have this conversation with, Dr. Neela Bhattacharya Saxena, professor of English and Women's Studies at Nassau Community College, located in Long Island in New York. She is the author of several books on the divine feminine. Welcome, Neela.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marianela. It's a great privilege.
Yes,
Okay.
I've been waiting for this moment. So why don't you start by telling us some things about your upbringing and the most influential people in your early years, and how perhaps the people who created the magnificent, and I can say that, a scholar you are.
Oh, that's way too kind, Marianela. I'm not sure what kind of scholar I am, but the human being that you're seeing, it's created
Mhm,
by my parents.
mhm.
And as you know, my mother just literally 2 months ago passed away.
Yeah.
And I guess the grief is still too raw.
Mm,
But
yeah.
between the two of them, they gave me the dignity of a human being,
Mm,
not a woman, not an Indian Hindu. I grew up in a Hindu environment and was very deeply religious. My grandmother was very, very loving. And it was so much love without any demonstration. It wasn't like every day you're being hugged or being said, I love you. No, it was just a given. So that profound, profound love. And my father was a Kali devotee. Uh,
mm,
and when I was born, it was like it didn't, I didn't know that at that time, of course, when I was growing up, that I was named after an esoteric form of Kali. And he was deeply, deeply devoted to the Divine Mother, Divine Feminine in the fiercest form. And it was his I have written about it. I actually
mhm,
wrote one piece called Color of God, where I give
mm,
a little bit of my early childhood experiences. But I think this rhythm of full moon and new moon, every new moon, we go to the Kali temple. We
mm,
never missed it. My father always brought us to the Kali temple. And since my grandmother came to live with us, my father's mother, when I was very young, after my grandfather died, she would do on a full moon night, she will have another ceremony. So it was this fabulous rhythm between light and dark, right?
mm,
I think that created the rhythm in me. It's
mm,
not through any language. I know
mhm,
a
mm,
fantastic thing about words, and that's all we have. But there's
mm,
certain things that create you that is totally through ritual, through silence, through
mm,
a kind of osmosis of the entire
mm.
environment. So I guess immediate um, credit, if I can do that, to my parents. Of course, there are many, many more, my teachers, my
Yeah.
relatives, friends, and everybody. But
Mm,
yes, I think I am totally the daughter of my parents.
yeah. Yeah. So you're saying your name, Neela, is associated with Kali, is a manifestation of Kali. And that brought me to what Malidoma Somé, the African sage, who's no longer on this plane, but his work, of course, is very present. But when he, in one of his books, he talked about how his name, which I think it meant the one who's charged with getting to know the other, getting to know the enemy, or something like that. And what he said was that designation of a name is kind of a rubric, is your map road for knowing how to live life.
Right.
Now, how is that for you with this Kali? I mean, you have done it. Was it a conscious thing?
No, never. I couldn't have even dreamed of doing what I'm doing. For God's sake, I had a PhD in English literature and I was studying Western world and actually wrote my dissertation on the tragic hero. And
Go
I thought,
figure, right?
yeah. And, I thought I'm a professor of English, Euro-American. Yes, very vastly expansive. I was studying philosophy, psychology, or ancient religions, rituals, Greek word, because in order to understand tragedy, I had to go towards that. So, but now looking back, I realized that too was part of that deep, deep fulfillment or unfolding rather of whatever my father's, my mother's, there something, the seed that was given through that name. And I didn't even know that Neela was one of, actually, Neela Saraswati Tara, that's the full name, also the goddess of learning, but she's the esoteric goddess and in the form of Tara. Anyway, since I am a tantric practitioner, as you know, both the Hindu and Buddhist versions. A lot of confusion people's mind about that. That's
not knowing how to pin you.
right. So, and now I'm a Gnostic practitioner, as you know, from the Christian history.
Right.
But that's, I think, unfolding of that slowly. Very much in the Indic tradition, the names are very important. Names, of course, there's a ritual, all kinds of rituals given with flames, and names are put there, and whichever name. But what I love about many stories about my name, besides the fact that it is that one of my aunts decided that to take the first letter of my father's name, which is N, whose name was Nripendra, and the last letter of my mother's name, she's Shamala La. So it's like literally N and L and Inila. So I kind of like that without making it too grandiose about Kali's name or anything. I like it that I am literally, as I said in the beginning, created by my parents, and my name kind of reflects that.
How beautiful, how beautiful. Now, you have written extensively on the divine feminine, but when you look back, your discovery of writing as an outlet, if you agree with me, right? Writing is an outlet, and that it can possibly be an affirmation of where we are if we do the kind of writing that comes from the center, from the heart.
Right.
What was your discovery of that? When did you discover the writer in you?
Okay, so probably the very first time I discovered, we lived, I know you know a little bit of India, it's a vast country. And we lived in UP where my mother tongue was not spoken. It's my parents who taught me. My mother mainly made sure that, and my father, by saying we couldn't use any other language in the house except Bengali. That's I learned. My mother taught me reading, writing, and speaking. I'm fully trilingual because of their efforts. So we would travel to the eastern part of India where I was born, where my father's house was. So that whole place had this magical thing for us when we would travel there, and it used to take 3 to 4 days sometimes through the trains and plane. It was, now of course you can do that quickly. So I wrote a little poem when I was a kid about the ponds, the trees, the fruits, because it was like an idyllic place as a child. So I think if I have to trace my word thing as a child without any consciousness of what is poetry, no, nothing. It was just a kid. It was just kid trying to express. After all, your parabola, right? Even though I know the experience comes from deep silence, but then there is this hunger to speak, right? I remember when I was writing my dissertation, Samuel Beckett's, I was, waiting for Godot was one of my texts. And there was either somewhere, I forgot where, that there's nothing to say, and yet there is tremendous compulsion to speak, right? Because without speaking, we do not make meaning of what I'm experiencing. It is by giving that shape that I think, so yeah, I would kind of go to that childish effort to express the delight of the land. And it wasn't about anything esoteric. It was simply the water, the ponds, the fruits, and the joy of childhood. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you said something. Can we go back to what you were saying about silence and as the I mean, in it, I practice and teach others mindful writing, and the premise there is entering the silence to find the words that are not discursive, that are not trying to impress, but that are that these are words that speak from the cells, from the cellular level. Is mindful writing is embodied writing.
Right.
So what can you say about now, who as a writer, published writer and a scholar, how are you using that silence that you mentioned before? And that
Okay. So silence grows inside you. Okay. We're born with, and women particularly, I've learned that from my spiritual teacher, that women have that naturally, the void inside them. And people have, unless you experience that, it's like another word, right? But the void is the womb of the mother. That is the root of all creativity. And that you experience in samadhi, which is again, there are stages of it. If you're a practitioner, not dhyan is meditation concentration. That a lot of people misunderstand the terminology here, right? But the experience of samadhi is a dissolution of the self. And dissolution, not just the ego, it's a dissolution of complete cessation. So if you experience that complete cessation, which we do naturally every night, if we can go into deep sleep, all right. But that is not naturally transformative, right? So that's why the practices take you there. So this is again what I have learned through my tantric master about the words come from various levels. There are amazing teachers in India, ancient India, who were the philosophers of language. So if the words come from what we call para, which is transcendental space, which is the womb again. It's transcendental, but it's not somewhere out there. It's in the deepest part of our being, which is the void. So if the words come from there, it will be spontaneous. It'll come with that, the power, Shakti, which is the female Vak. In India, also the goddess, same Saraswati, is also known as Vak, means speech, you know. So then, if that's why when the masters speak, it comes straight from that place. Now, for the lesser mortals like us, we have to make an effort and recognize. But then another level is called Pashyanti, which means what you are observing from observation. But if the observation is, let me put it in a complicated word, objective enough, by objective means unsullied by your own projections. Okay, so let me parse that. So what happens when we see something, right? When we watch something, if we are unaware or unconscious, so to speak, then we project. We're not really seeing it. We literally project our conceptions, preconception, almost automatically. The brain does that. Then we are not reaching that pashyanti level, the what we would call the witness consciousness level, if I have to translate that, the witnessing part of us. So if, again, through practice, we can reach that level, very high level, that too. It's only when the witness consciousness is fully awake, then words will come from there. But then there is madhyama, which is middle point, heart, and then there are words and walk. It's literally the words that are inside you, like self-talking, the brain chatter that goes on. If we're not aware, we're reproducing a complete unconscious brain chatter, which is not even properly discursive because not enough thought has gone into it. It's literally mindless chatter. So, you know, uh, at least we need to become aware that mindless chatter is not going to create anything worthwhile. Okay. So, in the creative process, when the energies are more or less balanced, you can access those reaches of your being, you know. And since I have been writing, I think the reason I remember the childhood thing, I've been writing these things I call pick poems, where I take these pictures, random pictures, and then from some middle of the night, sometime at 3 o'clock in the morning, I suddenly wake up with this longing to say something. And I'm not sure what it is that I want to say. And then suddenly a picture or a word comes up, and then it weaves itself, you know. And then I realize, and I can tell you from my recent thing, that some tremendous grief that I was feeling, it needed expression. And it just comes out in this short pic poem where pictures and so this is a kind of, uh, example of this use of language as an expression of being, an expression of our human condition in some ways.
So beautifully said, and so many layers to it. I love the picture, the pic poem, and I've read some of it that you have shared in social media, and I think they are just delicious, beautiful,
Oh, thank you.
and they tend to be very short, but
Yes.
packed with.
Right.
So what you were saying, what I was thinking, right? Like the passage, the journey to that samadhi, and I'm so glad that you made the distinction between concentration and meditation, right? That's not it.
Yes.
That's like
A stage, but
right,
yeah.
right. Will you say that playfulness
Hmm.
it's at the heart of that journey? Like when we get trapped in the discursive mind and the intellectualization, that's where we get lost.
Right. Right.
When we have that beginner's mind, I guess,
Right.
right? That playfulness,
Right.
that's when we can go through the many layers that then we can start leaving them behind to get into that no self or that bodhicitta.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So I love the word playfulness. So the
Mm.
goddess plays, right? The word
Mhm.
is called Leela.
Yeah.
It's a play.
Yeah.
One that it takes us out of too much seriousness. All right.
Mm.
It's not a very serious thing. It's deeply serious in the sense of vital for our survival, vital for our life, meaningful life on this planet, the short
Mhm.
time we have.
Mm.
But the playfulness, it kind of, I love, Alan Watts, one of deep influences on me, and I love listening to him now. He says that the difference between a father, stern father, teaching you do this, do that, discipline, right, and a playful mother, and it can be other way too. There can be a playful father and a stern mother. It's not gendered stuff, but he uses it in gendered terms. A playful mother teaches the child through play, you know, hey, look at this, look at, and the child gets all excited about it, and learns the discipline, learns the observation without any, strict, very strict rule. There are mothers who are very strict with strict rules, and their fathers who bring the child out into the playful world, right?
Mm.
So the playfulness, homo ludens, there's a word which I like, that it's a playful human being.
Can you please repeat the word?
Yes, homo, I believe it's ludens,
Luden.
L-U-D-E-N-S, yes.
Okay, got
I
it. Got
forget.
it.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
root word is, yeah, I think a Latin. I wish I knew. I know Sanskrit, but I do not know. Uh,
Mhm.
but I think that's the word. Or I'll find
Mhm.
it, the
Yeah,
exact.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I was
Yeah,
just curious
but
about.
it is that playful aspect of human beings.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
childlike, not childish, but the
Mhm.
childlike
Yes.
element
Right.
in us,
Right.
which I think these practices keep alive. you know
Mm.
if you really, when you have by really, I mean, again, it's tricky, right? I was very, very fortunate to have been born into a, I didn't know that, deeply tantric lineage. I was given very early crazy initiation, which I didn't even know, by my father's kali guru woman, sadhika Siddhama. So, and then, my Vajra guru. So what happens then, that you don't take everything too seriously, because the root of this practice is relaxation, you know relaxing your nervous system, relaxing your mind, relaxing your body, and then letting it flow, right? It's this fluency. And I like the word fluency, both in terms of language use, but it has a flow in it, right? So the playfulness brings out that natural flow, which we all have, except that we have forgotten, because we have taken too much into this, you know, uh, too much of this reading, writing, 3 hours, this and that, just excessive emphasis on just some aspects and suppressing the others. Yeah.
That's yes, well said. So let's continue the journey. So you said major in English.
Hmm.
How did you then make that transition to and maybe I'm gonna make too big of a leap, but you went through many stages and you landed in the Black Madonna. uh,
Right.
and
Right.
darkness as an expression of light, right? Can you talk to us? And I know I'm asking you to make a big jump
No,
here,
no, no,
right?
no problem. I will try. Yes. So, it just so happens that while I was writing my PhD dissertation, I met Rajan. You met my husband now. And in the Indian context, everything was wrong. It was just insane that I've shared that. Don't need to go too much into personal stuff. So, for somehow, through incredible difficulty, unbelievable difficulty, I ended up marrying him and ended up in the United States, completely lost, having no clue, having given up a really wonderful scholarship to England and all that. It was just insane, because you've friggin' fallen in love. And not just that, now when I look back, there was something else that was driving me to this insanity, which seemed like insanity to everybody around me. I was giving up my job. I was a professor, young professor, of leaving my country, leaving and entering into a completely unknown world. And that was true. But see what happened, it was like cleaned my slate altogether. I ended up here. I worked at a bookstore. I was just telling some friends the other day, I was sweeping floors and had no clue whether I'll ever get to teach, because I was a complete nobody here. But that was a very good experience. And now looking back, part of the sadhana itself. So, but what happened when I did start to teach, pretty much the year after I reached here, as an adjunct. Okay. I was very pleased. I know that's a very messy system. And then slowly I started to go to conferences and speak. Anytime language conversation about religion came up, and I would say, yes, Mother Goddess, this and that, I grew up. There was always a dismissal of the Mother Goddess. The assumption in this country, and again, I'm very grateful for those assumptions because that prompted me to probe more into, because I had taken my mother for goddess for granted, right? But I kept hearing, oh, you come from this third world poor country with patriarchy, women are this and that. But that wasn't my experience. I was startled that they thought that, again, they in quotation marks, that the United States has saved me from some terrible, you know, horrible religion. Again, not to say that there aren't terrible things in India. Believe me, I know quite well. Indian patriarchy is as terrible as anything else. But India retained something for strange reasons. Its traditions were not lost and they're very alive. That's why they're in my blood. So once my one women's studies conference, I went and said, why don't I write about, and again, wonderful about your writing thing. What is it this about this goddess that, I take for granted? So I ended up writing, very hesitant, very not sure. After all, I'm an English professor, right? but but what happened though, in the classrooms everywhere, people were not seeing me as an English professor. They were seeing me in through this gendered, racialized lens, right? All they were seeing is this little woman from somewhere in South Asia, so that gendered, racialized thing was thrown back at me. While I thought, hey, I can teach English, and I was doing, I was really enjoying it. Some students were validating me even in adjunct classes. So then when I wrote that and presented that paper, some guy came up to me and he said, you should publish this. I said, what are you saying? I haven't even begun to say anything. He said, no, at one point you should say stop and you publish it. It was a long time before I published anything. But something in me said, maybe I have something to say that is worth people's attention. But then much later, after I got my job, the children were born, I ended up at a Kali conference in, Columbia and Barnard. I was so shocked when I came to hear. I said, there is a Kali conference? How can there be a Kali conference? See, I wasn't part of the religious establishment of this. I didn't know there was an American Academy of Religion. The religion is studied with this thing. Nobody does that in India. Anyway, long story. So when I went to that conference and there all these people talk, and I got, the egotistical part in me. My God, they're all talking about my Kali. So I came, and most of them were white guys, very nice. Some of them became good friends, and I
Mm,
appreciated. I said, where is the voice of the woman?
mm,
There were two Indian women who spoke, much older. One, Sanjukta Gupta, amazing tantric scholar. Anyway, another one, Vidya Dahejia, a very wonderful professor. I don't know her personally, but I've known her work. But otherwise, they're all white men.
mm.
Some of them were saying,
Interesting.
yeah, and some of them were saying some outrageous stuff. And I kept raising my hand. I'm pretty shameless that way. Kept raising
Mm,
my hands and asking questions.
mm,
I guess that's the conference. At the end, another person said, well, we will wait for your book. And I said, what book?
mm,
I hadn't published a thing at that
mm,
time. But somehow these things, became real when I published my first book. That too came out of absurd need for a sabbatical,
mm,
and didn't realize that I had this. I've been presenting papers at different conferences. Then it was all about desire and women and Kali. So the first book, called in the beginning is Desire, tracing Kali's footprints in Indian literature. So that brought me into this dark goddess stuff.
mm, mm,
But while I was writing it, I wondered what happened to the mother god in this land, because
mhm,
obviously nobody. I would ask people questions informally. They
mm,
had no idea. even those, and I write it in my second book, that even those who were atheists and who were denying God, they were also denying a father God,
mm,
because the mother God wasn't even in the horizon of consciousness.
mm,
Deep,
mm,
deep in them, which I discovered later, but not on this thing. So
mm,
then I created the course at Nassau, The Goddess in World Religions. And in the process of teaching that course and traveling all over Europe, I didn't know I was unconsciously seeking the Mother God. And
mm,
then I discovered this most incredible thing, the Black Madonna.
mm,
And Marianella, I cannot begin to tell you how that experience
mm.
transformed me.
Yeah.
Because then I realized that Kali is not a Hindu goddess, which she is not anyway, because she cannot be contained within religions. She's a tantric deity par excellence and represents that entering into the void. That's why she eats time, she eats the
Mm,
self, but she's there. Because
mm,
if she is not some sort of made up deity, that
mhm,
Indian sensibility, if she's an actual thing experienced all over the world, well,
mm,
then she is there
mhm,
in different name, different form. And the Black Madonna, Black Madonna in non-white places would have made any sense, but in heart of Europe, the first one that I saw in Eisendel, which, by the way, China Galant's book, Longing for Darkness, led me to.
mm.
It's another magical thing. The books come automatically, right? Leading
Yeah.
their way, leading the way. And I stood in front of that figure. And that's how my second book, Absent Mother God of the West,
Mm,
Kali Lover's Journey into Christianity and Judaism, begins.
mhm,
My
mhm.
knees just in front of this profound Black Mary and Black Jesus together
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
heart of Europe.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So what did it do to you to find the Black Madonna? What when you think
One,
about it sounds like it was a shaking, like an earthquakey kind of
yes,
movement in you.
totally, totally.
Mm,
So let me tell you quickly that
mm,
I had, because of colonial experience, and you will understand, your audience will also probably understand the entire colonial adventure.
mhm,
I had tremendous resistance to
mm,
imperial Christianity.
mhm,
In
mhm,
India, we grew up, there are Marys everywhere. She's just another, Jesus shows up. There's no problem with that. But
mm,
Christianity as a religion is, I already, as part of me, especially the intellectual part, associated with this colonizing,
mhm.
oppressive system,
Yeah.
which always says, as you know, that, okay, your religion is wrong. And I think even those who are telling me the goddess is useless because you are an oppressed woman probably came from some impulse that your religion is wrong, and you just need to convert, whether to atheistic materialism or to right Christianity, which there are many. It's not just one Christianity. But I think, and it had to happen in a cave shrine, Marianella, in Greece, when
Mhm,
the divine dark feminine, through the figure of Greek Madonna, and
mm,
entered my being, and literally that resistance fell out,
mm,
and suddenly the oppressor oppressed dichotomy got dissolved.
mm, mm,
A vital thing. I
mhm,
was no so See, even when I was doing my post-colonial stuff and all that, I at some point I realized that British colonial stuff was merely blip in India's history.
mm,
And since I'm fluent in three languages, I have studied Sanskrit for 9 years, I knew what the treasure house was. And I
mm,
realized I didn't need to do post-colonial stuff.
mm. Can you tell the audience what you mean by the treasure house?
Okay. So the treasure house of transformative knowledge.
Mhm,
Transformative knowledge, deep intellectual engagement with the existential questions,
mhm,
consciousness, from the
mhm,
Upanishads to all the masters all
mhm,
over India, whether they are
mhm,
put within scholarly brackets, oh, this is Hindu, this is Buddhist, this is Jain,
mhm,
Sikh. They are various traditions, very much like, the Protestant Christianity is very different. There are 400 different Protestant denominations, like
Yeah.
each
Yeah.
is engaging with different way. But the dharmas in India contain something very real. And that's the reason people are drawn to that land, in spite of all its foibles, stuff like that. And I had read those texts. I grew up reciting those texts.
Mm-hmm.
Not just, I mean, most, lot of Hindus do not know. They
Mm-hmm.
just recite because it's like unconsciously, okay, do. But because I came from a mother who made me really enter, she used to make us write Hindi, Bengali, and English. Every day we had to write in all three languages. And Sanskrit mantras, she, highly, highly educated. She engaged with all the world's traditions. And because we were given this freedom to explore the world of uh, literature, the world of philosophy, without any oppressive religious upbringing, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
following the rituals, following this thing, but in a light way.
Mm-hmm.
There was no excessive anything. Um, so I realized, oh my God, actually, it happened in a very curious way at a conference when I was attending a philosophy. Again, I used to go to this philosophy and literature conference all over Europe.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I travel by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, my God, the dialogue they're having, and this will sound really arrogant, but it's okay. The dialogue they're having about language was happening in second century India between the Buddhist masters and so-called Brahminical this thing about the nature of language.
Uh-huh.
The
Uh-huh.
whole, Derrida, Poria, like anyway,
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
entire
Mm-hmm.
fabulous, not to undermine this dialogue, because this
Mm-hmm.
dialogue was necessary for the development of certain kind of philosophies of Western world, which I deeply, deeply appreciate. And that led me to Nietzsche, the philosophers who were actually bringing out. But certain things I knew because I had studied these things a little bit. Not
Mm-hmm.
thoroughly, because I had
Mm-hmm.
left Sanskrit when I did finish my BA, but it was deeply ingrained in me. And I could
Mm-hmm.
go to the original language and I could read a little bit. And I mentioned a tiny bit in my first book
Mm-hmm.
that, oh my God, I have something. I have access to this treasure house as an
Mm-hmm.
intellectual pursuit itself, which I did in my first book. Because, see, and that kind of brought out the treasure house even more onto the forefront through the act of writing, through the act of research, because that book was my return to India, right?
Mm-hmm. The
Because
first
this
one, you
country,
mean?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
return to India psychospiritually.
Yeah.
Because if this country says, oh, you were just an oppressed third world woman, so I had to go find out who that was. So again, not none of this happened consciously, by the way,
Yeah.
Marianella.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
this part of this whole thing. But in the process of writing that whole book, and through the footprints of Kali, through female desire, okay, and sexuality and this energy aspect, it's a dissolution, right?
Mm.
It's like textual dissolution happened. And I understood, oh my God, my instincts were correct. There is something about this tradition of the divine feminine, many
Mm-hmm.
different ways of communicating that. Is something radically real is
Yeah.
available in the methodologies, in the texts, and the living tradition
Mm-hmm.
of the gurus,
Yeah.
which is a very messy word these days because, but when
We
you have
know.
the real thing, but when you know what the real thing is, just because there are misuses, that doesn't take away from the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
was very, very fortunate, and learned slowly, very, very slowly, the entire tantric heritage of Bengal specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and of course all over India, and not India in the geographic national sense, the subcontinent. After all, my mother, father's roots are what is now Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Okay. A huge part of the Vajrayana thing that I'm exploring, not exploring, came to me It is now what is Pakistan and Afghanistan, this entire Indic subcontinent, the sphere of influence, which of course went far, far into the eastern, southeastern, and all the way to China, Japan,
Yeah.
through the movement of, the
The
traditions.
interconnectedness
Right,
is what you're pointing out, right? This
right,
intrasnet that
right,
in
right,
the end, I
right,
mean, borders,
right,
geography is all
right,
invention, but what
right,
matters is
right,
these webs of interconnections
right,
and that's what you were pursuing.
right, right.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
it was like revealing themselves to me. It was like
mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm,
in my blood, and it's
mm-hmm,
just through these strange synchronicities. I love Jung.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So through these synchronicities, I discovered, oh goodness, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And that also stabilized my being.
Mm-hmm,
The discomfort that
mm-hmm,
I felt, it took a very long time to adjust to this country's ways, which I appreciate a lot. But then I knew what to avoid,
mm-hmm,
how not
mm-hmm,
to fall into the deadliest traps
mm.
of
Which
modernity.
is what's the deadliest trap?
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the deadliest trap is unconscious materialism,
Yeah, yeah.
where by that there's nothing else.
Mm-hmm,
There is
mm-hmm,
just this thing, and consumerism, and
mm-hmm.
which are two sides of the same coin. Either
Yeah.
the world is a sinful place that must be destroyed, or the scientific atheism that is nothing but stuff. So yeah, go ahead and extract and consume because there's nothing. It's just
Mm-hmm,
it's just stuff. You are stuff. You are a mechanized
mm-hmm,
whatever stuff,
mm-hmm.
and fall into,
Appearances. Yeah.
yes,
Mm-hmm,
yes. And the hungry ghost, the
mm-hmm,
deadliest thing
mm-hmm,
in tantric
mm-hmm,
tradition is created as hungry ghost. You're never
mm-hmm,
satisfied.
mm-hmm,
So in the
mm-hmm,
middle of plenty, you are full of anxiety, full of
mm-hmm,
always wantings more and more and more.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Not, I wouldn't say I absolutely enjoyed the prosperity, and
mm-hmm.
prosperity is Lakshmi. So you don't, but there is that border there, right?
Yeah, and the hungry ghost in a way is an expression. I don't know if you agree with me, but it's an expression of the scarcity mind, right? It's
Yes,
the seeking and seeking and
right,
seeking because we feel like we are wobbly
right,
all the
right,
time.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. Absolutely,
Huh. So
absolutely.
what I'm thinking is you talk about the assumptions as opportunities, and what I'm thinking is the divine has a way to give us knowledge through absurdities, right? Like it just like
Yes,
presents
yes,
us with these things
right.
that apparently are nonsense. But
Mm-hmm.
if you use the curiosity and the playfulness that we were
Yes,
talking about,
right,
that's how we can go deeper into meaning. So
right,
you found your Black Madonna
right.
and you've been diving into darkness.
Yeah.
When you think about, racially, the racial implications of darkness, and
Mm-hmm.
your rediscovering or bringing the Black Madonna into your work,
Mm-hmm.
um, what do you think it does to, let's say, your students,
Mm-hmm.
BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color? What what do you see when you talk about darkness and the Black Madonna? Any
Yes, yes,
specific thoughts that come up with that?
yes. So it is in my goddess class. That's where I have the opportunity to talk openly about it, right? Otherwise,
Mhm,
I am sneaking things into my other classes.
mhm,
uh, but so one thing I discovered through this exploration, that why I was not reacting to either whiteness or maleness,
mhm,
which I found my uh, quote unquote some feminists definitely are. they were constantly reacting against it
Mm-hmm.
with a vehemence, with extreme
Mm-hmm.
anger,
Mm-hmm.
that why wasn't I reacting like that? Because I didn't need to. One, psychospiritually, the most powerful emblem in my psyche is a black naked female. All right, which is in the totem pole, is at the bottom of the racialized hierarchy, gendered hierarchy, right? If you're a black female, you're just in the top. And I do that in my classes, even my writing classes. I create this hierarchically organized whiteness and blackness, and they all agree that that's how
Mm-hmm.
they grew up. Okay, that everything good is up there. It's white, light, God,
Yeah. Yeah.
good. And then at the bottom is all the black, female,
Mm-hmm.
sexuality, body,
Mm-hmm.
you name it. And again, racialized immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then I change the geometry. I said,
Mm-hmm.
turn it into a symbol that they are familiar with, which is yin yang. I said, if you change the geometry from that hierarchically organized line, okay, to a circle, suddenly it's no longer, it's dancing together, right?
Beautiful.
It is
Beautiful.
completely in and out. There is no
Mm-hmm.
watertight whiteness. You cannot find where the white ends and the dark begin. But the darkness, though, I have to always, because darkness is associated in this culture with everything bad. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
I mean, that's
but
the racialized part, right?
right,
Yeah.
racialized part. But I use the word in my book endarkment, not enlightenment. People have mistranslated Buddha's nirvana into enlightenment. That's not what nirvana means. It is an
Uh-huh.
entry into profound darkness,
Yeah.
because nirvana is extinguishing. That's what is the
Mm-hmm.
extinguishing of the.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how people miss it.
Desires, identity.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how people missed it, because
Mm-hmm.
in the Western world there is an enlightenment, right? And again, too much obsession with light. Let there be light. But what was
Mm-hmm.
there before light?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which is the mother of God, by the way.
Yeah.
The other thing with the Black Madonna and
Mm-hmm.
traveling through Greece, and when you hear the word mother of God, she is before God, right? If you're a
Mm-hmm.
mother of God, which is this dark
You're the
womb.
genesis, you're the
Yes,
generator. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. The
That is where
source.
everything is, right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's endarkment. Nirvana means endarkment. It's
Mm-hmm.
only when you are completely extinguished in the
Mm-hmm.
moment, then you arise as the
Mm-hmm.
Christ child, or the, the Buddha being, or we call them Sadyojata Shiva, newborn Shiva form, or, all these
Mm-hmm.
different forms, which see and then starts to dance with the light and
Mm-hmm.
dark as that being, the Buddha being, awakens and recognizes the oneness with the earth. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But yes, so see, so I very carefully show that, one, that race is a constructed thing, and how this darkness is connected with psychologically instilling in us that there is something foundationally wrong with Black people. And I think you had mentioned that wound,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
vital to
The
recognize.
soul wound that,
Ed
particularly
Dura,
Eduardo Duran and
right,
others have
right,
really say, hey,
yeah,
people, let's pay attention to this.
yeah,
It's part of the trauma that we have
right,
to
yes.
deconstruct. Yeah.
By the way, thank you so much for pointing out amazing this Eduardo Duran, because I
Yeah.
heard his Zen talk. I think
Mm.
he gave a talk.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
understands.
Yeah.
See,
It
he is able to
does.
translate the
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist language away
Mm-hmm.
from the quote unquote whitening of it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
he connected it
Absolutely.
with the elements. He understood the native traditions. He also
Mm-hmm.
understood, by the way, I wanted to say that when you create this marriage between native traditions with Indic, whatever you want to call it for
Mm-hmm.
this, if you want to,
Mm-hmm.
tantric tradition, actually,
Yeah.
at its highest expression, that you see that how through the practices you dissolve that victimology thing. Okay, you
Mm-hmm.
have to see the wound and you have to let it dissolve. See
Mm-hmm.
what happens when you accept, even as a skillful means, the notion of karma, right?
Yeah.
Reincarnation and karma, regardless of reality, doesn't matter, we do not know that. Then I have been an oppressor in some life, right?
Mhm, mhm,
I have,
mhm,
So like that, there was a fantastic movie, I think some cloud thing. So if we have been a black person once, we have been a white person, pink person, whatever color you want to put that in, it kind of dissolves
Mm-hmm.
that victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Because victim mentality can never heal.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you have to go to the root of it, go
Mm-hmm.
deepest layer. And that's what I discovered through I realized that 200 years of colonization.
Mm-hmm.
And if I
Mm-hmm.
go into the depth dimension, to the treasure house, you know, well, hey, that's just a historical contingency, vital. It
Mm-hmm.
destroyed the economic system. It's important to see what it has done to this particular incarnation of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's just call it this dark female body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oppressive systems, unconscious. And this is where I think Jesus is, they do not know what they, forgive them, is an
Yeah.
incredibly powerful recognition
Yeah.
that whatever has happened and continues to happen comes from this unconscious being driven by energies that we do not even comprehend,
Yeah.
you know. So, so then the race, gender, class, all these things then take on a very different dimension.
Yeah.
Vital to know the
Mm-hmm.
history, vital to recognize the methodology, because it is the mind's game, right? It is the power hungry, egotistical,
Mm-hmm.
need to survive part of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this I learned so beautifully from my Gnostic teacher,
Mm-hmm.
Rosamond, who passed away a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to see her, we were also on a Native American journey. We went to all these
Mm-hmm.
mountains all over this country, and I absorbed the energy of this land's native wisdom.
Yeah.
And Rosamond, oh my God, oh, another incredible
Yeah.
guru of mine, who said how to recognize the demiurge, which is a Gnostic term. People usually externalize it, but demiurge is that part
It's
in us,
going
right?
inward. Yeah.
Yeah, that part in us which wants to control,
Mm-hmm.
which wants to hoard, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which wants to, and we don't want to deny that. Again, the wonderful talk by the Edward Durand about
Durand. Yeah.
native knowledge, that you
Yeah.
don't want to discard it. Pure tantric knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot get rid of energy of greed,
Mm-hmm.
lust, and these are the three things, right? Sex, greed, and anger that the
Right.
tantric tradition transmutes. That you understand it and let it go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the my understanding
Yeah.
of this.
And going back, I mean, you always make my head spin with your beautiful ideas.
Oh,
You always
sorry and thank
infuse.
you.
No, in a good way, in a good way. You really kind of plant seeds in me that then I just keep chewing right on them. But what you were saying about Durand's work and the seeing the roots, right? What
Yes.
is at the root, and I also thinking, with these MSSR, the Caribbean sage, I call
Mm-hmm.
him,
Mm-hmm.
used to point out to the boomerang effect, right?
Yes.
Like the oppressor is suffering in equal capacity as the
Yes.
oppressed because of
Yes.
this boomerang effect. And if we go to the roots that you
Right.
were
Right.
saying,
Right.
we're gonna find that boomerang effect
Yes.
also there, right? Is
Right.
that what you were?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The other thing is, I think I remember a poem.
Mm-hmm.
It's called The Ballad of My Two Grandfathers.
Huh.
Uh,
That
I don't know if
sounds.
you've read this.
y-
A Caribbean poet. I just
y-
completely blanking out on the
Yeah.
name. It's an
Mm-hmm.
incredibly beautiful poem.
Mm-hmm.
It's written by the speaker. It's a mulatto person, right, who's
Mm-hmm.
both white and black. So
Mm-hmm.
he realizes, or she, whoever that voice is,
Mm-hmm.
that the oppressor grandfather and the slave, both the slaveholder
Mm-hmm.
and this thing, they're both
Mm-hmm.
present in my blood.
Exactly.
What
Exactly.
great
Yeah.
wisdom,
Yeah. I
right?
I I don't remember the author, but I
Yeah,
I know the poem. And
yeah.
that's the conversation, right? Like I was teaching yesterday on the theme of grief to therapists. And I was talking about how important it is to pay attention to these, let's say, two-way street. From the historical context to the contemporary. And where is the attention? The attention is we are all on the same boat. We are all wounded here. Hence, Duran's concept of the soul wound that we all have to tend to.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're not going anywhere.
No, it keeps festering. And it continues through this epigenetic stuff, by the way.
Exactly.
And these are knots. These are knots in the nervous system.
Yeah.
We have to untie them. We have to untie them.
Exactly.
And in India, we have this, they're called granthis. Actually, the Sikh great book is called Guru Granth Sahib. Granth means these knots in us, epigenetic, or we can use the language of science. I discovered a Mary in Malta, and I discovered she's there all over the place. She unties the knots. So we must untie the knot. Otherwise, the wound will keep festering, and we will keep unconsciously transmitting these wrong things into the next generation. And the fight will continue.
Exactly. So we have
never-ending fight.
We have to stop the generational lineage that brings the pain, right? Like it has to be cut. But there is so much I want to ask, but we must stop.
I know.
I feel like this idea of dismantling, right? These ideas and looking at ways to heal the lineages, right? The transmissions deserves another conversation. So we're going to come back to this, but is there anything that you want to say to the audience in closing? Anything that I didn't ask that you want to say before we close?
Well, one, that profound gratitude to you as well as your audience for listening to me. The one thing I always say is relax. It's just that come back to that playfulness. Remember the childhood. Remember the wonder, which is still there in all of us. And keep that curiosity, that childlike in us, because we get jaded so easily. And we lose that, life, that prana, that chi, if you want to use the Chinese language. So, relaxation.
That's it. I received that. I need that. So, and I know the audience is probably also saying yes, relaxation. So thank you so much, Neela. And
thank you, Marianella.
We'll have another iteration of this conversation.
I would love that.
Into the lineages and the transmissions that must be, if not stop, at least revise. Totally. So thank you. And thank you for listening to What a Word is Worth. You can access today's interview at the different platforms and also in YouTube. And if you are interested, hit the subscribe button. And also, if you find our program beneficial, leave us a review. I am with you in love and compassion always. Always.
Thank